You never know if it could change your life. Take a chance, you're neither wrong or right. You never know if you don't roll them dice. You better roll them dice. You never
But anyway,
know
let's get
if
to
it
what we were
could
actually
change
talking
your
about.
life.
Sorry, this is Dungeon Master of None, by the way. I'm Rob.
I'm Dungeon Master Matt. And he is...
Yeah, I'm Rob. Dungeon Master Rob.
There we go.
And we're actually going to be talking about something totally unrelated, and we're going to be talking about monsters today. Yeah, we really enjoyed our off-the-cuff design of a one-shot a few weeks ago, and we're going to have one coming up where we discuss the results from that. But we wanted to do something similar with monster design. We have put out like a couple of stat blocks for monsters in the past, but it's something that we haven't been doing consistently, and we wanted to get back to that.
Yeah, absolutely. It's one of the most fun things you can do as a dungeon master to really put your spin on a game, especially if you have players who have run games themselves or have played before, right? If there's a monster that isn't in, that they've never seen or heard of, it blows their minds. It rocks their world. They love it.
Yeah, and this is one of Dungeons & Dragons' strengths. One of the best things about the setting in the game, again, like we complain all the time about the genericness of the standard D&D setting, but the D&D monsters are awesome and iconic. Beholders, Bulettes, Rust monsters, Illithids, all these things that were dreamed up by Gygax or subsequent designers are really just like exceptionally good and interesting foes to define a campaign. This is one of the strengths of the game for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you're a dungeon master and you want to homebrew a monster, there's no wrong way to approach it. But what are some of the inspirations or reasons why you would want to make your own monster?
Well, right. So it's about, a monster is, we're always talking about this, same as with any work of fiction, you want it to sort of serve the story. So if you're creating your own monster, maybe you have this makes the most sense if you have like your own homebrew setting and you're trying to build some things that specifically fit that setting. But it can also work if you're trying to tell a specific type of story, and the monsters that are available to you in the monster manual aren't the right theme or the right style, and you want to sort of create something that fits in a niche that you can't do with what you're given.
Right. So you want something that fits with your story. You want something that maybe is thematically more appropriate to your campaign. I will also just say monsters can be an interesting mechanical challenge or combat or other sort of adventuring challenge, right? By having some unique mechanical abilities. That is also a valid reason to make a monster.
Right, exactly. You don't always have to make this monster from scratch. This is something that is explicitly spelled out in the DMG, and it's something that I generally do when I am creating a monster.
So like reskinning a monster?
Or taking an existing stat block and tweaking it. This is what I do most of the time, unless I'm trying to accomplish something very specific. So you'll take something that's the right CR or has the right stats, and you'll reskin it, you'll change a few things, you'll add an ability, you'll remove an ability, and then you have a new monster. And I think this is most of the time what you'll want to do. But
Rob's absolutely correct here, right? You never want to do more work than you have to. 90% of the time, or maybe more like 75% of the time, there is a monster that's already there that's mostly what you need. For example, in our upcoming episode on our one-shot, we needed sort of a angelic ball of light, sort of like a lantern archon, but a librarian. In my playtest of it, I just took the Quasit and changed a couple of its abilities and what it looks like. And then, boom, it's a celestial Quasit, right? A tiny little flying ball of law and good.
Right.
And that's perfect.
Yeah. And for that same campaign, I wanted, a slight challenge. And we had, some fungus-related demons. And so I grabbed the Dretch, which was really close, and tweaked the stats a little bit and added a new ability related to
spores.
which they already almost had, and that was it. That was easy. It was, I just reskinned it and just tweaked one ability, and voila, brand new monster.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I think reskinning is a great way to go and a way to save a lot of time. But let's say you want something that can't be done through that.
Right. So
how do we want to do this?
Well, let's talk briefly about what they've got in the DMG, which is a good guide. They've got. So if you take your Dungeon Master's Guide class and turn to page 273, you will find the entry on creating a monster. Please read through this in full before returning to the podcast. No, don't do that. Just listen to what we're going to say.
It's really boring.
It's pretty boring. You should, if you're interested, read through it because it's a pretty good guide. Matt and I have talked about this before. Other rule sets, specifically Pathfinder, have had a lot, I think, clearer rules for CR and designing monsters. But the DMG, the 5th edition DMG, does have everything. It's just there's a lot more steps, but basically, you'll take a look at like what CR you want it to be, and then you'll have it'll tell you what the proficiency bonus is, roughly what the armor class should be, roughly what its hit point should be, attack bonus, etc. And then
the most useful thing here is that there's a table where if you want to know if these stats are going to be challenging, overwhelming, underwhelming for your players, you can sort of compare what you've created and be like, well, 100 hit points for players who are, 4th or 5th level. Is that going to be challenging or not? And you can get your answer.
It is worth noting that there are always some things that are like well outside of, how this works, and based on CR can be incredibly challenging. Like a CR isn't like a shadow, like a CR2 or a CR1 or something like that. And that like can easily, a few of those can easily wipe a party. Whereas, I'm pretty sure there's like a thug that is also CR2, which is extremely unlikely to wipe a party, even in numbers. So, yeah.
Right. One mistake, and this is a huge thing to realize, especially if you're a new dungeon master, is that challenge rating doesn't tell you everything, right? If a monster is resistant or immune to all damage except from magical weapons, and your party has no magical weapons, then that monster is going to be a huge challenge for them, whereas otherwise it might not, right? So you got to look very specifically at what its stats or what its abilities can do beyond its sort of stats.
Right, and here's an obvious one, but like if it's a flying creature and you have a party full of barbarians, that could potentially be a problem. Most of the time, it won't be. But even if you have some ranged characters, just be aware that if you throw a flying encounter at them, and half the party is just gonna have to stand on the ground and throw rocks at them, that's an issue too, and
as long as they don't kick rocks.
As long as they don't kick rocks, they can. That's just there's something to be aware of, and sometimes can trip you up if you're not thinking about how a monster will interact with your party.
Awesome. Okay. Anything else from the basic, couple pages? It's really short for creating a monster in 5th edition.
No, it's good, and the charts are very useful, and I would encourage you to read it and, work with it. It's a good section, and I think it covers... It does require you to, in some cases, use your best judgment and sort of wing it or fudge it, but as long as you're not going too far afield and getting too wacky, you shouldn't create anything that's going to really desperately overpower your players if you're aiming for the right CR.
Right. And I would say the best way to use this section is to basically check your work, right? It's more like an answer key than a guide. You kind of come back to it and say, are the things I made out of whack or not? And if they fit within the parameters, you should be good. One of the great things about being the dungeon master, and, I try not to do this unless it's absolutely necessary, but if you create a monster that is, you gave it an immunity that makes it impossible to kill or something like that, there's probably a way for you to adjust that on the fly as you're running the game.
Oh, yes. This is another thing, is that when designing monsters, do not be afraid to adjust stats on the fly if it looks like things are going badly, or well, either way, if they're going badly for your players or going badly for you.
So, are we ready to build our own monsters from scratch? I think Rob and I each have an idea that neither has heard, so...
Yep, let's build some monsters from scratch.
Let's fucking do it. All right, who wants to go first? I'll roll a die.
Sure.
Or do you want to go first?
No, let's roll a die for it. That's on brand.
I got here a standard chance cube.
Okay, great.
High is you, low is me.
Okay.
All right, that's 5. That's you, Rob.
All right. Well, let me talk to you about how I decided on what monster we were going to do today. I was thinking about how traditionally D&D and game designers go about finding new and interesting monsters, right? So there are a lot of creatures from myth and legend included in the...
So to start creating your own monster, sorry to interrupt you here, you just have to meditate on the meta nature of narratives and storytelling itself. All right,
that's right. Pick up your copy of Joseph Campbell and yeah.
Jesus Christ, Rob.
No, listen.
Way to be approachable.
Wait, no. It's going to get very approachable here in a second, Matt. So there's a lot of, there's sphinxes and there's mermaids and there's brownies and fairies and whatnot, right? You see where I'm going with this, right? But
yes,
one of the issues with this is that this sometimes wanders into what can be, sort of cultural appropriation, right? If we start getting like lamias and onis and things, it's not like a big deal, but it wanders into some strange territory. So I was thinking, if we're trying to come up with a
Stop appropriating Middle Kingdom culture. Don't run sphinxes unless you're a pharaoh.
God damn it. I was thinking, what can we do that's good and honestly American? What can we pull out of to truly let's create the stats for the classic Appalachian creature from the abyss, the Mothman. That's right.
Mothman.
We are going to create stats for the apparition from West Virginia, the culprit, the prognosticator behind the Silver Creek Bridge collapse, the Mothman. Silver Creek Bridge, right? Yeah. Silver Bridge, sorry, not Silver Creek.
Awesome.
So I was thinking, how can we design the stats for this creature from American myth, something that is purely
Neil Gaiman. Before you get too in the weeds of the stats, for our listeners who are not familiar with sort of the Mothman legend or something, give us a quick recap.
Sure. So this is I love this. This is so amazing. So there was about 100 sightings. Again, take everything that we're going to say with an extreme grain of salt, but this in around Point Pleasant, West Virginia, sort of, again, deep Appalachia, people started seeing what they said was a man-like figure.
People have often said this about me, a man-like figure.
Man-like figure. A large flying man with 10-foot wings, eyes that glowed red. And between 1966 and 1970 or so, again, there were about 100 sightings of this creature. Later on, again, this basically all there is to it. Flying man, large wings, red eyes. Sometimes it would bang, which said it was bang on the roofs of teens, making out, necking in their vehicles.
Wait, the Mothman was necking, or the teens?
The teens. The Mothman would bother teens,
right,
as monsters are wont to do.
Right. All monsters are focused on teens.
Again, so
very true.
Much like Sasquatch, there was never any real video evidence or any sort of real even a photo of this thing, but it became
shocking, embedded
in popular culture. This was made most famous by the writings of a parapsychologist, John, what's his name? John Keel, which was then made into a movie. He wrote the book The Mothman Prophecies. Anyway, so in 2002, a film was made of this, starring Richard Gere and Laura Linney, that culminates in the collapse of the Silver Bridge. the I guess the sort of like prevailing idea behind the psychological part of this is that, I don't know, the Mothman is sort of a supernatural manifestation that causes people to experience precognitions, including one that presaged the collapse of the Silver Bridge. Again, I don't know that there's anything in real life that relates to this, but who cares? Whatever. Let's have fun with it.
Awesome. So we're not appropriating any culture other than white working class culture.
That's right. The only one that's still okay to appropriate. Anyway,
right.
So let's work through this. So
let's make a Mothman.
Let's make a Mothman. So I figured a good baseline CR for this would be around CR5. I think that's something that fits, that would be in sort of the right range.
Right, and this is one of those things, like, it's basically up to you as the Dungeon Master in 5th edition, right? Obviously, a Mothman doesn't seem like a CR20 world-shaking challenge, but beyond that, I mean, it's pretty much up to you, right? I mean, this could be a CR1 thing, this could be a CR5.
And if you wanted to lean
I'm down with CR5.
Yeah, if you wanted to lean into, like, the precognition part of it and, like, make it like a, causing psychic visions for everybody in the area, then sure, it could be like a CR15 or something like that. But it seems, if I'm trying to like hew to the middle between, the various legends. So I'm aiming for CR5. But again, it's up to you. Have fun with it. This could also be, like Matt said, like a CR1 or CR2 thing. But let's aim for CR5. So consulting our handy chart, that gives us, a proficiency bonus of 3, armor class of around 15, hit points between, 130 and 145. And, it's going to do, again, around 33 to 38 damage per round. And one critical thing is its save DC is going to be around 15. I think that's going to be important for what we're building. Matt, I think
because the next question, right, and correct me if I'm wrong, when sort of making a monster, is we start off talking about what role does it play in the story? How does it serve the story? So what's sort of the role of a Mothman monster in your campaign specifically, or what do you want it to do for a story?
So for the way I'm envisioning it is, I think this is going to be more on the random encounter side of things, something that is either a side quest or encountered en route to the main challenge, not something that is a critical arc, right? This is something that while the party is adventuring, they are encountered and it throws a wrench in their gears. And we'll get to maybe how it might do that when we get to the special ability that I have in mind for it.
Okay. I like that. So it's basically a monster that and there are lots of monsters like this in the Dungeon Master or in the Monster Manual that like sort of stake a claim on an area and
yes,
fuck things
exactly.
up like that. It's fucking up some village. Everyone's seeing it. It's causing them all kinds of problems.
That's exactly right. It's a
territory claimer.
It's got a territory, and either they will wander into that territory or they might be asked to go in and deal with the monster that has staked out this territory.
We definitely know, because so you wouldn't expect to see like a Mothman or 4 Mothmen like serving as the henchman of an evil wizard.
That is also something I wanted to really like lean on. This is a solitary creature. You will never find a pack of Mothmen. There is always just one Mothman. So again, this is also
how sad.
I know, it's very sad. The Mothman is a tragic figure, Matt. It's a creature, sad, last of its kind, possibly, but definitely a solitary creature. This is also an interesting thing to think about, and a lot of, not so much in 5th edition, Pathfinder used to be very good about this, but you want to think about like whether or not your creatures, when you're designing them, will be encountered alone, in pairs, in packs, how large the groups are, etc. But a Mothman is always going to be encountered alone. Just the one.
Okay, cool. Where do we go next?
Well, let's so again, looking at our stats and our tables, let's figure out its hit dice first. I'm imagining that this is a large creature. Could be medium, but I'm going to say, given the size of its wings, let's call it a large creature.
Okay, yeah.
So taking a look at some monsters from CR5.
This is a good way to get started. Probably more useful than the chart is to flip to your monster manual and look at the list or on the SRD, the free SRD. Look at monsters by CR and compare it up and down to equivalent things. This is way more useful.
Right. So I'm looking at, do this. Definitely consult the DMG, but also compare by CR. So looking at some CR5 creatures, it looks like a lot of the large ones have between 11 and 13 D10. I'm not imagining that the Mothman is possessed of like an unimpeachable constitution. So I'm gonna say let's give it 12 D10 hit die to start with, right? Let's start there, and then see how we're doing. I think that's a good baseline. Should give it a pretty substantial pool of hit points to work with.
What is its like special based on what we know from Legend and stuff? What is its like special abilities or things that it can do that make it some kind of threat to the territory or to adventuring parties?
Sure. So here's like what I was building the whole idea around, right? So I'm imagining that its key ability is let's call it an aura for sake of simplicity, like a visual aura, right? Like so.
Okay.
When you see the Mothman, right? If either within 30 or 60 feet or within visual range of the Mothman, your player characters have to make a, let's just for simplicity's sake, call it a DC 15 wisdom saving throw. If they fail, they are afflicted by, I mean, I just want to call it the Mothman prophecies, but let's call it Mothman psychosis or something like that, where they are afflicted by precognition and premonitions and visions, something that afflicts their mind, right? And we'll just call this, for now, I might want to adjust this to be more interesting later, but let's just call it confusion, right? It'll just, they will be confused for, let's call it 1d6 rounds, with a save at the end of every round, and during that time you need to roll you roll a d10, and there's a variety of different effects.
If we want to make it like a gaze thing, like if they can see the Mothman, does the Mothman have to see them? Do they like have to look into its eyes?
No, they do not have to look into its eyes. It doesn't even have to be intentionally trying to affect them. This is just a consequence of being around the Mothman, right? This is just like something that it does.
Because if we want to make it a gaze, right, we could look at something like the Medusa or the Basilisk as a way to sort of, players have the chance to avert their eyes and not look at the Mothman?
No, I'm imagining
just next to it.
This is something that is just a consequence of being near it. It is not something the Mothman even is necessarily aware that it is doing to people, right? That this is one of the things about the Mothman. The legend is like not clear if it's like a hostile thing. It just like so happens.
Could be a friendly Mothman.
But just being around it causes you to see the collapse of Silver Bridge or other nonsense. So this is just something that can't be avoided. If you're in proximity to the Mothman, you have to make a save or be afflicted by these visions.
So basically it's giving people visions, and you mentioned the confusion spell, right?
Right.
That's a 4th level spell, so that's a pretty powerful
so this is a powerful
thing
effect
for a CR5 thing. They get a save. Do we want to use confusion? If you remember the spell, you roll a d10, and there's a variety of effects. There's a 20% chance that your player who's affected by confusion can just act normally, a chance they can't do anything, a chance they move in a random direction, and a chance they just attack a nearby creature with a melee weapon. Do we want to just use the chart from the confusion, or do we want to add some other things that might sort of convey the flavor of precognition or visions to our monster?
So it's either that, or the alternative is that they become, that it's like a daze-like effect, right? So they're like, enraptured by or consumed by their visions and cannot act or wander aimlessly.
I sort of like the rolling on a chart and them doing something different or crazy, right? I feel like days or just you do nothing is one of the least satisfying encounters, at least from the player's perspective, right? No one loves failing a save and then what's the consequence? Well, you sit there. You lose your turn.
I agree.
Do not pass go.
I'm imagining that using this Mothman as a tool, if they're given precognition, for the DM to describe some future event or eventuality, right? As a way to drive the story forward. However, if the actual effect is days, that's not great. And also that places some pressure on the DM to make this encounter more interesting by having some stuff ready. But, that's okay. Sort of how I imagine this as a tool.
Don't let me hijack your monster too much, Rob.
I like what you're asking. I think I do like the rolling and I do like the confusion effect, but maybe let's have one of the possible roles be a precognitive event, a vision into the future.
If we wanted to make it as simple as possible, let's take the same D10 behavior chart from the confusion spell and let's replace the 2 to 6 outcome. The creature doesn't move or take actions this turn to the creature doesn't move or take actions this turn. The creature gains a vision of the future. And you could play this where you could basically give this you could make this a DM thing, right? The DM tells you something that might happen. Or to make it less work on the DM, you basically sometime in the next week, 24 hours, the creature, you gain a flash, you gain a vision. You don't know what it means. But you can then use it. It could be a benefit for the player. They could gain they could re-roll one D20 check to represent their understanding of the future sometime in the next week. So you could take a turn away from a player, right, by their days, but they actually gain a benefit out of it.
I like that a lot. I think that's a great bit of flavor and a great way to mix up and make interesting the Mothman encounter, for sure. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
All right, so that's the Mothman special ability, which is really like the core of this monster. So what do we have left to map out? So
the other things, we need its arm class, hit points, speed. It's probably got, a flying speed, its ability scores, its senses, its languages, and sort of, its attacks and alignment. Like, what does the Mothman want, right? Does it want it to be left alone? Does it want to influence events and haunt people? Like, what is it trying to do?
So I'm thinking,
and of course, all
the Mothman is true neutral. It doesn't necessarily know what it's doing. It just has a territory, and it has this effect on people. So it's territorial. It neither, is trying to, influence events or, it's just trying to live, just trying to be a Mothman. One thing I was thinking...
It's just trying to be the best Mothman
Mothman it can be. I was thinking, you mentioned this is a fairly powerful effect, and that's true. So I'm trying to think maybe we should reduce its hit points or something to make up for this relatively powerful aura that it has. It's also flying, which is an issue. So, yeah.
One thing we can do to reduce the aura's power, there's a lot of ways. You can reduce the range. Mm-hmm. You can reduce the save, or you can reduce the duration, right? It could be a 1-round effect.
Maybe it should just be
after you've been affected by it, you are now immune.
Yeah,
so
maybe it should just be a 1-round effect, regardless. Yeah, I think that's right, actually. So once you're affected by it, you're immune, and it only lasts regardless for a round.
Okay.
And there's a chance to act normally and a chance to,
Chance to act normally, a chance if you lose your turn, you gain precognition. Mm-hmm. Again, you just want to be really careful when you take away the ability to do anything from players, but I think this is a nice workaround.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's bang out the rest of the stats here for the Mothman. The chart says the AC of a character around this level should be like, or a monster should be like 14 or something. Flying creatures should have a slightly higher AC, so we're looking at a 15 or a 16 here.
Yeah. Let's call it 15. Nice, even. Again, it's not like a particularly defensive creature.
Right.
Let's go 15.
We've got to give it its stats and then attacks. I think the Mothman should definitely have, and sort of senses and things, it should definitely have dark vision, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Shows up at night. What about sort of any sort of immunities to things? Like, is it immune to psychic damage?
Yeah, let's say that it itself is immune to. Well, I guess this doesn't really make any sense for him. Well, but it's a humanoid. It's immune to charm and confusion, and let's say resistant to psychic damage.
Then the other thing, and this is why, going through the stat block is helpful, languages. Can the Mothman understand people, right? Is this something, because if you give a creature languages can't understand anything, then basically the only way to beat it is to kill it, right? And that might be the case for the Mothman, but can it understand languages?
Yeah, so the Mothman
can it be reasoned or communicated?
Understands Common, and I guess if this is D&D, let's say Common and I don't know, Sylvan and one other, but it cannot speak, or it cannot. No, it can't speak, but it has telepathy. So it can sort of communicate with you with its mind, but it cannot speak normally.
Excellent. So when a Mothman is attacked, it basically, or it usually is sneaky and hidey enough, it never gets to that point, but its default sort of fight or flight response is probably to show up, curse everyone with visions, and then fly away
and then
into
try
the
to
night.
flee. Yes, if it is attacked, that's correct.
Okay, and then the rest of it is, I think, attacks. If it's a 5th level CR, it should probably have a multi-attack of some kind. Since it's a solitary creature. Does a Mothman have big claws, or should it also have the ability to like grapple or lift up a player and like drop them as it's flying away? What do we want to do for attack?
Yeah, I'm imagining let's say a claw and a slam, or a
2 claws.
Yeah, 2 claws. Yeah, let's just say that. Again, this isn't a big like smashy creature, but it should have attacks, so let's say 2 claws.
The last thing is it has a proficiency bonus. Is it proficient with any skills or saves?
Yes. I would say it itself is proficient. Do monsters get 2 saves the same as PCs do, right?
They either don't get any saves, or sometimes they get 2. I think exceptional monsters might have.
Let's be consistent and give it a proficiency and a wisdom save and stealth and perception, right? That fits with its style of being.
I would look at to try and figure out what its stats are. I would just make it easy on myself and look at what's the stat line for a similar sort of flying creature. So I might flip over to a harpy, or even maybe a manticore or something.
Mm-hmm. At CR5, it looks like we have. Actually, not a lot. Air Elemental is a flying creature, right?
We've got a Manticore at CR3. Harpy, I think, is a little lower too. So we might, consider the Mothman slightly better than those.
But it looks like in terms of general stats, we're about on par with an Air Elemental. So
yeah. Okay. So stats, we're probably looking in the 15 or 16 to 18 range for strength, dexterity, and constitution. Since it's a flying creature, probably a little higher dexterity and strength. What about its intelligence and wisdom? Is the Mothman an intelligent, sapient creature? I could imagine it having like kind of a low charisma score, as it's weird and hangs out alone, like an 8 or a 7. But how intelligent is the Mothman?
I would say it's of average intelligence. I don't know that it's a hyper intelligent creature, but let's say that it's of humanoid intelligence. Let's give it a 10 for right now. Okay. And then obviously it is deeply wise. So give it at least a 14 there. And then I think it has a low charisma. It is unable to interact with most creatures.
And so now the rough stat block we've outlined, which definitely check the link in the description to read it in its completed form, tells us enough to run the monster, right? That it is a sort of wise creature of the wood that has trouble making itself understood. It can easily be a threat to be eliminated or something to be negotiated and convinced to relocate somewhere else. It leads me to this sort of question that is probably not addressed by any of the Mothman legends, but we could ask in a Dungeons & Dragons campaign is, what or who created the Mothman, or did it emerge somehow from something else? Was it an experiment by an evil wizard or druid? Was it created out of some sort of magical trauma of a Appalachian child who fell off a bridge and had its blood sucked by a bat? Believed in or was the god of moths cursed someone with this? What creates a Mothman?
Right, and what was fun about picking this for me is that it's not a really robust Mothman mythology outside of the the general enthusiasm for the idea behind it, and you have some liberty to explore and find out more and introduce this as something that has an answer or something for your players to investigate.
But since we're creating it, what's 2 to 3 hooks for why a Mothman is here, right?
Oh, sure.
That we can give to Dungeon Monsters.
So the one I was thinking of, right? You've got like a Witcher style problem, right? Your players arrive at a village, and the village is having problem with Mothman sightings, right? This creature is harassing farmers out on their fields, or people going to and from work, people coming out of taverns, and they're frightened and they're scared, and they need somebody to drive away or defeat the Mothman, right? That's lurking in the woods just outside of town. That's to me the number one way you might introduce this into a campaign.
Absolutely.
Matt, what are you thinking of a way to introduce this?
Well, I was thinking that you could also basically have a Mothman if your players are going to visit either a wizard's kingdom or a wizard's tower or something. The Mothman could be outside, basically a failed experiment in creating a Minority Report style precog monster, or if your campaign is entering, the Feywild or a place where the Fey have strong influence, it could be a creature that's sort of attracted to those magical energies. It definitely has a little bit of Fey to it.
This would be a great...
So this could be an aberration or a Fey. I suppose
that's a good point.
Decide which one.
We have not decided on what type it is. I would say probably an aberration, but if you wanted to make it a Fey, that would be... I think there's a lot of... a good argument to be made that this could be a Fey creature as well.
Yeah, I'm feeling aberration a little bit more, which definitely leads me to be yes, this is either an ancient experiment that was created by the wizards or some dark
consequence of a magical mistake, either a wizard or some magic energies gone wrong. The third, like we mentioned this a bit, but a third potential hook is that, the players are literally just traveling and they have an encounter with the Mothman, and you would use this to maybe impart some knowledge on them. Like use this as a tool as a DM to give them a vision of the future or introduce them to something. This would be a particularly useful one-off monster to drive the campaign forward if you wanted to.
Absolutely. I think we can add to the stat block just a little thing that says visions of the future. Anyone who sees the Mothman has a chance determined by the DM to gain a vision of something to come, and dungeon masters can then use that or not, right? To say the Mothman shows you this, right?
Right. Okay. Anything left for us to determine with the Mothman?
I love Mothman. Mothman love me.
Love the Mothman. Yeah. So make sure to check the episode description and the website. We'll have this in the homebrew section. Feel free to borrow and use and adjust the Mothman to meet your own ends.
So did Mothman, good. Love Mothman. Are you ready to do a second monster?
Yeah, let's do the second monster.
Rob said, Matt, you better fucking come up with a monster for the show. And so I panicked and I was like, oh, what should I do? Then I had an idea in one of my games. I have an evil wizard, and one of the things about any role-playing game, but especially 5th edition, is if you ever have an encounter where there's one creature versus a party of 5 or 6 players, it's very hard to balance that sort of thing. It's got to be a lot more powerful and have a lot of hit points. This wizard is not extremely powerful. He's only 3rd or 4th level, but I needed some sort of things so that the players don't overwhelm him, and it's an interesting challenge. What's one of the most iconic thing that a wizard has as its servants that are always around and are fun challenges to make? It's golems, right?
Right. I was like, wait a minute, where's Matt going with this? Okay.
It's a golem. One of the problems, though, in 5th edition and in most editions of Dungeons & Dragons, golems are big, scary things, right? If you're fighting a golem, you are very... high level, at least probably 5th level to fight.
Oh yeah,
golem.
even the lowest level golem is a pretty substantial challenge. Yeah,
the lowest level golem, the flesh golem, is still a pretty, it's a CR5, and I needed something a little bit lower because players are not that high level yet. Neither is this wizard, so I risk messing up the iconic feel of a golem. If I make a low level one, but I'm okay with that. What do wizards and other sort of arcane spellcasters have tons of extra lying around their wizard towers that they're always messing with that they might use as material to craft a golem, right? Not flesh, not clay, not stone, but would definitely convey to the players that it's not as scary.
Is it paper? Is it a parchment
paper?
Golem?
Precious paper.
Paper.
So I'm doing the voice from Waterworld, the most precious substance in the world, but
paper. Have you ever seen paper? Look at it. Smell it.
A wizard's going to have extra paper lying around. Maybe, in fact, use scrolls, pages from spell books that they no longer use,
Ooh, nice.
ancient tomes, and you get kind of an origami feel to
Nice.
the golem. It's all folded over again. It's got some runes and magical writing on it. It's got like a little paper mouth that opens and, can't really talk. But so here's my idea, either like a paper or a scroll golem.
I like that a lot. Though I have to say, sort of like from a poetic standpoint, calling it a parchment golem has like a real like fantasy feel to it. If it were me, it
is done.
I do like
now a
parchment golem. Yeah,
parchment golem. All right.
Ooh, I like this idea a lot. This is exactly what a wizard up against the wall needs to create some fodder to keep the heroes away. And he's like, what do I have on hand? Oh yes, look at all these goddamn scrolls. What can I do with them? No, I like this.
Yeah, and I could also see a parchment golem being like, golems are typically huge, hulking, monsters that the wizard might lose control of at any moment and do some crazy things. But I'm imagining a parchment golem as being maybe smaller, maybe not even either a medium or a small creature as opposed to large or bigger. And a wizard, might see some utility in making a parchment golem in that it can help him with some basic tasks around the wizard tower when it's not actually fighting. So it's less of a threat, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think this is, exactly right.
Again, starting, and you don't have to start with challenge rating, but I know that this is going to be for a party of, they'll either be 2nd or 3rd level when they get there. So this is going to be CR, 1 to 3. This is not a challenging creature.
So if it's meant to be encountered with, is this meant to be with the wizard or?
Yeah, it's going to be encountered with a 3rd level wizard.
So
it'll be throwing a couple second level.
Let's just go ahead and give it just like a 1 CR.
Right.
And
and so that's, proficiency bonus 2, armor class 13, hit points 71 to 85. this is definitely going to be less than that.
That
Because I want
seems
this wizard
high.
to have mini parchment golems. So I'm going to probably give it hit points in the probably 30 to 40 range.
That seems right, yeah.
Paper is not something that should be quite scary.
Right.
Offensive, I like what it said. There it's probably going to be. I'll probably even knock that down as well. Probably, it's going to do somewhere between 5 and 6 damage. Save 13. I'm not sure if it's going to have an ability that requires a save yet, but I've got some ideas.
Okay.
So there's my basic outline.
All right, I like it.
So, one of the things that we've talked about is, right, use other monsters as your guide. So golems are much higher CRs, but we can still take some things from that, right?
Right.
The thing I get looking at golems is they all have dark vision. They understand languages of its creator, but can't speak. And they all have tons of damage and condition immunities.
Right.
So I definitely want to give my paper golem some of those things. Which one should I do?
Well, so the condition immunities is easy, right? Right. Even though this is substantially weaker than a stone golem or whatever, it still is a construct, right? So it should be immune to like sleep and charm and
yeah. Here's the list: charmed, exhaustion, frightened, paralyzed, petrified, poison.
Exactly.
I'm still fine with that, having all of those, and it'll limit some players' abilities to fight that, but that's okay because there's also a wizard in this encounter. Any of those things could be used against the wizard instead, right?
And
adds
also,
an interesting level of tactics.
This would be balanced by, of course, like the obvious thing that we have to address is that this would be vulnerable, of course, to fire, right? That is the obvious weakness of a paper golem or a parchment golem. Yeah.
And that's perfect because any player should see something made out of paper and be like, oh yeah, I'll just light that on fire.
Right.
And we might even add a special thing to say, vulnerable to fire, so they take extra damage from fire attacks. But, add a thing that, like, if you have a torch and you try and thrust it on this golem, that's going to do damage to it. We can also add that, something we could just steal from the flesh golem, like aversion to fire. If the golem takes fire damage, it has disadvantage on attack rolls and ability checks until its next turn. I'm just going to add that
I like
to it
that.
because
this should be very weak to fire. It should be crippled by exposure to fire.
Now, I think I might also give it damage immunities, probably poison, and I think because it's so low level, instead of damage immunities, I will give it damage resistance to bludgeoning attacks. That sort of paper beats rock.
Right. It doesn't necessarily make sense, and also isn't like balance wise a good idea to make it immune, but making it not take quite as much damage from being smacked seems to make sense for sure. If we really wanted to, we could also give it damage vulnerability to slashing, sort of scissor beats paper. I'm again seeing these as like really weak things that wizards, are just like, well, I've got all this magical paper laying around. I'm going to do something with it. This would be a good thing to throw at your players to make them feel cool and powerful while they, torch them or like slash them into pieces. So maybe, I don't know, maybe damage vulnerability slashing would be fun.
So we should also give it, because all golems have this immutable form. So, this is just, you can't polymorph it or something like that.
Oh, yeah. Uh-huh.
Here's a question, though, for you, Rob. So should a parchment golem have magic resistance, basically that it has advantage on saving throws against spells and other magical effects? All golems have this.
I would say, I guess, yes. To be consistent, then absolutely it should, yeah. But it's still a golem. It should still have this ability. I think it's balanced by a lot of the other stuff that we're putting on it, though.
Right. And I think we'll take away the that it has damage immunity from non-magical attacks not made with adamantine weapons. I don't see it being that powerful.
No, it's not that powerful.
So this was really, players are like, ooh, I'll cast a Burning Hands on this, and that's good, but it's immunity to magic might make it a little more resistance to that and really encourage players to just light a torch and stab it into its face.
Right. Yeah.
Okay, so we've got most of those things out of the way. I feel like since it's a parchment golem made out of wizard parchment, it needs a special ability related to that. I can imagine, the way I would write in the little description block, right? It's made out of parchment, but you can see bits of half-finished and mistaken scrolls scribbled on the folded paper. Pages of spell books that were abandoned and stuff like that. So that leads me to some sort of special ability that the golem might have. How do we want to, any ideas for how to do that?
Yeah, I have a couple of thoughts. Oh, this is very interesting. One thing I guess I'm imagining is that there's, I find this fun. I don't know if this is good game design, but maybe there's a random chance for the golem to manifest a spell or to as it is like in combat or as it becomes under threat, like maybe an aspect of the spell books activates and it casts a shield spell or something like that. I'm not really sure how we would game that out, and that might add too much to it. Maybe there's a way that we can make that simpler though.
Okay, I've got an idea, and we might have to tone this down a little bit so it's not too complicated. We do have a variant table on page 140 of the 5th edition DMG called Scroll Mishaps.
Ooh, this is
so
perfect, Matt. I was thinking about that. Yeah.
So Scroll Mishaps is if you fail to cast a spell from a spell scroll, you make a saving throw. If the throw fails, roll on the Scroll Mishap table. It's stuff like it does some force damage. The spell affects a caster or ally. The spell affects a random location. The spell's effects are reversed. So we could use this table plus throw out we could put this in the stat block, a d6 of maybe first level spells that a parchment golem might have on it. Things like Burning Hands, things like Expeditious Retreat. And then what would trigger the sort of scroll mishap table? Is it getting hit by the scroll golem or the parchment golem, or is it maybe killing the scroll golem that causes its effect to release on the nearest creature or something like that?
I think so. Let's see. Oh god, I think we just leave out the stuff about a random first level spell and just I love this scroll mishap thing. Great find. I think that we should just have it be a scroll mishap. Oh no, you're right, because it won't make any sense.
You need a spell to use the scroll.
Okay. So I think we should have one. So let's have like have a 1d. You're right, a 1d6 of first level spells, and then when it dies, you have a scroll mishap.
Perfect. When it dies, you have a scroll mishap, which could be beneficial to the players. Yeah. It could cause them to do some minor damage. Right? We're gonna say this is first level spells, so it'll be no more than like a d6. And yeah, we'll also provide in the stat block for the Parchment Golem. A Parchment Golem has, you can say, a 50% chance to have a scroll mishap when it dies. Here's an example of the spell effects that could be on it, and you can make it a table. Or, the Dungeon Master could pick this Parchment Golem has the scroll of True Strike on it. This Parchment Golem has the scroll of Levitate on it, etc., etc. So you could pre-plan yours, or you could just roll it when it dies and see if it has one.
I love that. That's awesome.
Okay.
Yeah.
Last thing is anything else on special abilities before
no, I think
we
that's
move
perfect.
to
Again,
attack?
it's a golem and it's already got some special stuff and it's a low level, so we shouldn't bog it down with too much. But this is just like a great way to theme the Parchment Golem for sure.
Should its attacks be like a slam, or do you imagine it having... I could imagine that when it is threatened, its normal sort of paper folded origami hands fold out, or one of them folds out into like a origami sword, paper cut.
Yeah, it should be a slashing thing, I think. It should do, hardened paper slashing. Not a lot of damage, but some damage.
I think most golems have multi-attack, but since maybe just one of its hands folds into a sword, and since it's a pretty low level, it only gets one attack.
Let's just give it
slam,
one attack. Yeah.
The typical to hit and damage, 5-foot reach, it's slashing damage. I was toying with maybe it should have some kind of bleed effect for a paper cut, but I think that's a little too busy.
Yeah, that's too much.
Since we've got all this other stuff.
If it's not strong enough, maybe give it multi-attack. But for now, I think one attack is good. Still could be a threat because of all the different things that golems are resistant and immune to. So, yeah.
Yeah. And like other golems, it's going to have really low mental ability scores, charisma and intelligence in the 2 to 5 range, wisdom maybe of 8, and it's not going to be particularly strong or have high constitution scores. Those are also going to be in the 10 to 13 range, I think. And then I would give it 30 feet speed and a pretty low natural armor, something in the 10 to 12 range, and then I think that's pretty much it. Parchment Golem. Write up a description of these extra spellbook and scrolls folded into a creature, and there you go. Bing, bang, boom.
There you go. Yeah, we'll have both of the stats for these monsters in the episode description and on the website. If you have thoughts or suggestions on these, absolutely let us know. And, of course...
Making monsters is fun.
And, of course, feel free to adjust as you see fit. If you have... By the way,
at the end of the episode, Matt and Rob realized that the real monster was the dungeon master all along.
That's right. Turns out it's man. No, the real monster is the friends we made along the way. Don't forget to rate and subscribe. Leave us lots of 1-star reviews about how we're rude to very powerful people. And add us on Twitter or email us at dmofnone.com. Or sorry, dmofnone@gmail.com. Sorry, got carried away. And yeah, if there's anything you want us to, by the way, if you want to hear us design something like a specific type of monster or a weapon or anything, absolutely let us know, and we'd love to try to game it out. But thanks for listening, everyone, and keep rolling them dice.
Keep rolling them dice.